And hello everyone, and welcome to Reality Talks with Alex, with our today's guest, Dr. Joe Perez. And I'm glad to have you today. Thank you for.
Thank you, Alex. It's my honor and pleasure to be on your program this morning, sir.
Yeah, thank
Or
you.
afternoon, I should say, from your perspective, right?
Yeah, and depending on who is watching from what part of the world, it
True.
is morning, good afternoon, and good evening in the same
That's right.
time. Yeah. So I'm happy to know you from the last maybe 1 week. And I was really impressed from your passion about knowledge and basically about education and why this is so important for you. And I know that you are strongly involved into helping people in the digital space, information technology, and so on. So data is also something which is very important for you. And as it happens to be in the future, data is going to be the big asset for all of us as society. So we can start wherever you would like. What are your impressions? What are your passions? What do you think? Where is the future going forward? And so on and so on. And we can start from here.
That sounds wonderful. I just love painting with a broad brush. That's about as broad as you can get, and absolutely enjoyable, sir, because it really does speak to my passion. It has been said that data is the oil that drives the engine of society. The impetus that pushes us forward, the stuff that decisions are made of. People have to everybody that's involved with the gathering of data, the reporting of data, the dissemination of data. They all look upon this as a commodity, as a thing that decision makers can use to derive the insight that they need to be able to move forward with decisions, right? People have great business acumen. They have their intuition, their instincts, their yearnings, the things that they want for their business, the things that they understand about their business cycle. But yet, quite often people forget that, yeah, those instincts may be great, that intuition may be very finely tuned into their business if they know what they're doing. Their acumen may be certainly enlightened, but it can't be fully informed unless they take advantage of the data that they have at their disposal to be able to inform those decisions, to be able to, I guess, give light to the insight that they already have. You have to have both. And being involved with data the way that I am, it just puts me right in the thick of things. I love dealing with it. I love working with it in my job, and I love speaking about it at conferences. So, yes, sir, you absolutely touched a nerve, and a very good nerve at that.
So can I ask you regarding the data? Because, for example, this is how practically I use data in my daily experience. What I realized is actually that each of us, the human beings, how are we producing the data? By having all our experiences on a daily base. Actually, if we are ignoring them, anyhow, this data is there. It doesn't matter if it goes through the digital data recording or how the
Right.
universe is recording everything. We don't know exactly, but for sure, if we learn to transform all our experiences into long-term assets, it is going to help us to realize who we are, why we are behaving the way we are behaving, and constantly all this data that is accumulated based on how we live and how we go through life or through our conscious experience. Actually, all this data can be transformed into assets, and long-term, once we learn to reflect, we can find so many things that maybe we have missed the first moments. And since you're a data man, how are you dealing with all this in your personal experience?
Sure. That's excellent question, Alex. Um, I think I think we need to get something straight with folks. When people think of data, they think that the very first thing, other than the android from Star Trek, right? Even those that aren't Star Trek fans, I guess, would probably know Brent Spiner's massively awesome portrayal of the artificial life form known as Mr. Data. But dealing with data itself, and looking upon it, as you say, as an asset, as a commodity, as an issuance, people don't recognize that it's not just numbers, it's not just rows and columns in a database, it's not just rows and columns in a spreadsheet. We're talking anecdotal information, we're talking stories that can be told about what's going on with production, what's going on with sales, what's going on with manufacturing, what's going on with employee engagement, customer engagement, vendor engagement, and so forth. All the information that a person has, that the decision makers have in processing and in recognizing the steps that they'll have to take, the issues they'll have to deal with, the problems they'll have to solve, and the directions that they'll have to go. All of this is indeed driven by data, though they may not see it as such. All these different pieces of information that I just listed in my crazy example, it's all data as well. It does not have to be rows and columns on a spreadsheet or database to be considered data. It's information that you can act upon. you know, um, Techipedia defines actionable insight as information that can be acted upon, or information that gives enough insight into the future so that those who are making the decisions can act upon it and will have sufficient reason or sufficient, um, insight to be able to move forward and make those decisions. They have to make a decision, answer a question, or solve a problem. One of those three things happens, and it recognizing all the things that they have at their disposal to make that happen.
So can I share with you one interesting, not anecdote, but allegory that actually with the human beings, we think that we're moving forward and this is how we are making the experience, but there is one allegory where actually it is like we are driving in a boat and we're just all the time looking back while we are going forward. So from the perspective of the data, we the human beings we are not able to move forward if you don't look back into the data. So from the perspective of the boat, we are looking constantly in the data that we are producing in order to be able to move forward. So it's a little bit, it looks like this for me. In order to make the decisions,
right,
always to look back in order to move forward.
That's an excellent allegory. I like that. We, as even as little children, we always learn by example. We learn by stories, and those stories make a picture in our mind, and we remember them. And your allegory is terrific. It's an excellent look at the difference between um, the data that describes, data that defines, data that prescribes, and data that proscribes, right? As you are rowing in the boat, you set your direction, and as you are making the effort with the oars, you're not looking in the direction you're going, you're looking in the direction that you've been. And quite often decision makers have to be able to derive patterns from what they've seen. The long look. Okay, stockbrokers will always tell you past performance is not an indicator of future results. I mean, you hear those disclaimers all the time when you go to invest in the stock market. Look at what the stocks did. Well, if they did this good in the past, surely they will continue to do this way in the future. That's a whole lot more complicated at that. But yes, being able to recognize patterns, being able to see, okay, this is what's been happening. This is, as we have made changes in our strategy, this is the result that we have seen so far. And yes, a good view at the past, in case you have, say, a predictable business cycle, can indeed be an indicator of what's going to happen behind you in the future behind you, since when you're rowing, you're facing the past. It's almost counterintuitive, right? But no, it makes perfect sense. Yes. So there is something to be said about being able to recognize those patterns that can provide some sort of indication as to what the future is going to be like. I don't know, perhaps wearing a helmet cam or something that looks behind you, like the backup cameras in your car, right? That you can start seeing the direction in which you're going. So at least in a general way, you're pointing the boat in the right direction.
Yeah, that's good and fabulous. So basically, what are we to do with the data in order not to over analyze? A lot of people are going into procrastinations nonstop because well, they're seeing the data and so on. So where is the point where, okay, you see the data, you find some patterns, but also you're not afraid to move forward into the unknown?
Right. Yeah, and that's the beauty of innovation. You don't know. You might have some kind of an idea. You have, as you said, you've recognized the patterns, and you have an idea of where things might take you if you take a certain course of action based on your experience, based on, and this is where that acumen comes in, that intuition, that insight, that instinct, if you will. That's something that you can't really get just by looking at cold hard numbers. I mean, that's why we humans are the ones who are going to make these decisions. The AI engines, the ML, machine language and artificial intelligence engines are a whole lot better than we humans are at performing the same calculation over and over again with absolute guaranteed accuracy, with absolute lightning speed, with absolute dependable consistency, but only to a certain extent where you're only looking at yes and no, left or right, ones and zeros, negative, positive, whatever the case. As far as those gray areas, the nuances and so forth, that should be up to us to be able to decide, using the information that's coming towards us and relying upon our previous experience, as well as how well in tune we are with the business processes in whatever we're doing. Then yeah, I think it's much easier to chart that course, as it were, getting back to your nautical metaphor there. And I think part of the key, and I've mentioned this before with other folks that I've consulted with, I think part of the key is a healthy blending of strategic with tactical. Right. You have the big picture mentality. You have the general direction of the boat. Again, I love that metaphor. I keep coming back to that. Right. The data that you have coming in, the information that is being fed to you, the information that you are gathering from, all these different aspects. You have your pulse. You have your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the business. Right. You have that overall high level strategic view. But at the same time, you cannot lose sight of what's going on operationally, right? The tactical view, what's going on in the day-to-day affairs of the business, those day-to-day decisions, those incremental bouts of turmoil and resolution, those incremental improvements in your processes that you'll see each day, the tactical operational things that will execute your long range vision, right? As a leader, you have to have that long range vision for your business, your mission, vision, and goals, as they call it, right? And within that long range vision, you look at the different lines that are coming towards you, the different tactical operational processes that are going on, and you see that those day-to-day operations are meant to execute your long-term goals. So keep your eye on the long view, but keep your hand on the wheel in the short view, and let the people that are doing their jobs, let them do their jobs while you manage the overall framework and keep everything moving forward. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah, I had one other allegory since we're now
Yeah,
more
sure. Why not? I love it. Yes, sir.
into
Hey, I
the
was an educator. I was an educator for 10 years before I got into IT. So, when you talk about story and allegory and, things that are used to help guide people's thinkings, yeah, you are absolutely speaking to my passion.
yeah,
So, yes, continue.
because when I speak with people about the directions, about the visions they have, and I heard it, of course, from somebody else, but it is very interesting. Usually, when we speak about vision and about the future, we always think that it is something very concrete and it is something like it should be very detailed. But actually, the explanation is that the vision of the future, it's like a painting. First, you have a little bit like a canva, then you have a little bit like a feeling, then it becomes a little bit like some patterns, then it becomes more detailed. And the biggest and the beautiful details are coming little by little into the picture. So
Right.
moving towards something, we don't know exactly what it is because we start with 100% unknown, but we have some feeling and some inside gut that we're moving towards something, and little by little it is revealing before us, because a lot of people think, no, I
Yes.
need to 100% see something exact as a detail and then I need to move forward. And that's why they ask, why don't I see a vision, or why don't I have exact direction?
Right. I couldn't agree with you more, Alex. People who get so hung up on seeing every single detail. You can't know every single detail. I think that the best visionaries are the ones who can, again, getting back to your painting with broad strokes that we talked about at the beginning. The visionary who can paint with broad enough strokes to construct at least a skeletal framework of the general direction in which they want to go, with perhaps some general overarching goals and perhaps some intermediary directives to get to those goals. They're not going to know precisely what it's going to look like, as you so beautifully depicted, with your illustration of the painting. You have an idea, you have a concept, you haven't gotten there yet, but you are not going to sit back and not do anything for fear of, oh no, I don't have any details, well, I can't go forward. And you're overcome by anxiety, you're overcome by I don't know, you're frozen in time, as it were. And that stifles innovation. People who are looking for too precise a forward vision will get stagnated. I believe that if you're not innovating, you're stagnating. At least make a move, at least act upon what you already know. Take incremental action. Don't be so concerned about not having that full picture. At least you have some general idea. The line's going to go up. You'd rather go up than down, as long as it's going up. Okay, we're moving in the general direction. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. Let's keep trying to improve these processes. Let's keep looking for ways to do something better tomorrow than what we did today, and certainly better than yesterday, a day at a time, a step at a time, a procedure at a time, a process at a time. And as you keep meeting these incremental goals and you find that you are making improvement, then yes, I agree 100% with you. As time continues, that picture will start becoming more clear. Then you can start focusing your efforts on reaching the next incremental goal, still with the overall vision in mind. Yes, even if you don't know that much detail of what it's going to be like 5, 10, 15, whatever years from now, at least you got to take some step to know where you're going to be tomorrow, and continue progressing towards that ethereal, somewhat nebulous, but constantly refocusing. And sometimes you might need to change direction. Unexpected things happen. You might need to refocus, you might need to reposition, but even then you still have that overall goal of improvement, achievement, reward for a job well done, for at least making some sort of incremental progress. towards that that overall goal. And as time goes on, the picture starts getting clearer. You still have things that are further ahead that aren't clear yet, but that's fine. You're only going to you can only look into tomorrow or a few days. Just keep moving in the direction and do the next right thing, as the Frozen movie says. The girl didn't know what was going to happen 3 months from now, but the best she could do was do the next right thing. And as it reveals itself to you, then move in that right direction and keep progressing towards that overall goal. And eventually things will start coming into better and clearer focus.
Yes, so basically, since we the human beings are much more different than the artificial intelligence and all these algorithms out there, so
Right.
how do you define this uniqueness that we actually have and also are quite afraid of, but we are risk takers in a sense?
Yeah,
We
that's right.
Is it possible also the artificial intelligence to take risk, or it's only
Mm.
something that is common to the human beings to go beyond?
Wow, that's an excellent observation, Alex. As a technical person, my favorite answer is it depends. That's not a comment. I get myself out of trouble. Oh, I don't know. It depends. No, really, it really does depend. I'll clarify that before people throw tomatoes at me. I'm glad we're not in a live audience. I might get tomatoes or something thrown at me, but no, if I catch it, I can eat it later. But anyway, okay. The beauty of the human psyche is that um and again, not everybody's alike. I don't want, in this case, this is not a case where I want to paint with too broad a brush, excuse me, because some people are more risk averse than others. Okay. Do you look at what are the stakes? What is the cost versus the benefit? What is the danger versus the desire, right? The outcome versus the obstacle, and weigh those in your own grid of your decision making process, and what your moral values and your sense of right and wrong and your sense of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable for a risk. And sometimes that's not a thing that you can actually define precisely into an algorithm that an artificial intelligence or machine learning engine is going to understand. Those the AI ML stuff, again, they are best at situations that are defined, that are ones and zeros, that it's either this or that, and you can program as many contingencies as you want into said engine. But at the end of the day, it's going to come right down to that yes or no, one or zero, left or right, white or black, right or wrong, whatever. There's not an in between. Okay, where they excel is getting to that point much more quickly than we can, and getting that to that point in a dependable, consistent manner. And I shall say, consistent with the programming instructions that they have been given. It all comes back to the human who made the programming. If the human is flawed in their thinking, their understanding, and makes errors in the instructions, well, then the AIML engine is only going to carry out those instructions precisely the way they were given. We'll get to the point where we make that value judgment more quickly, and here's where we excel as humans: making those value judgments, seeing the difference between, okay, it's not always black or white, left or right, one or zero. There might be a 0.2, a 0.7, a point, and we make those value judgments as to what level of risk is acceptable, right? After we have weighed those, those things that I talked about earlier, and then jump into the fire or jump into the pit, or jump into the mouth of the dragon, as the case may be. Again, if we're talking metaphors here, and we'll find that, okay, we took the plunge and this is not acceptable. What is the exit strategy? What can I do to help circumvent this thing, and to try to mitigate the losses? Because sometimes you roll. Well, I don't gamble. I was going to say roll the dice. I don't, because I don't gamble. But say you figuratively speaking, roll the dice and you don't get snake eyes. You get something that's bad. Well, okay, so what are the alternatives? What steps can I take to help mitigate the losses or to try to recoup, recover, reserve, respond, and redirect? How's that for a bunch of R's? And see what, how can I make lemonade out of the lemons that I've been handed? What can I do to make the best of this terrible situation? Because yes, sometimes you are going to make wrong decisions. Sometimes, you are going to run it into the ground. So get up and try something else. See what can you do to extricate, redirect, refocus, and then try to move forward in spite of what has happened. So I don't know of any artificial intelligence that can make that difficult of a value judgment. Because again, they have to rely upon their programming. In a similar sense, we rely upon the mental grid of biases and experiences and so on that we have as to how we're going to judge a situation, which direction we're going to take, and how we're going to handle the mess excuse me, the mess that we've gotten ourselves into, and see how to pull out of it. So yeah, I see risk as more of a human factor than a machine factor.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but that's how I see it.
And because I have a saying, and I have put with the human beings that we are border zone creatures, and
We are
actually
what?
zone creatures. So
Okay.
actually, we feel alive only when we are on the edge, only when we are between the 0 and the 1, only
Right.
when we are in this invisible, unknown, or wherever. Only then we start feeling the life. And I don't know why we are actually created like this, but I see it in myself, and I see that this is where actually the magic of life is starting to happen.
Sure.
And basically, how are we always, when we see borders, we always want to go beyond. We are unstoppable in
Right.
any direction.
Right. Some people see borders. I can see, I see it both ways. Sometimes we look upon borders as giving us a defined framework under which to operate. If you have a known process, then in that case, yes, defining lines and borders and boundaries, that's a good thing. I mean, especially if you're playing soccer, right? Excuse me, football for our European friends. Okay. Yeah, you can't go out of bounds. You go out of bounds, you pay the consequences. You lose the ball, the other team gets to go, whatever, right? So boundaries are a good thing. However, when it comes to, you have a certain goal in mind, they're not boundaries, they're more like obstacles. And I believe as entrepreneurs or as innovators or as people who want to get something done, they'll see an obstacle as an opportunity, right? I've often said this in my speeches, and people like this. You say obstacle, I say opportunity. You say adversity, I say advantage. Turn those obstacles into opportunities, turn those adversities into advantages, and try to move forward with what you have. Push beyond the artificial boundaries, those things that would chain you down. People who say, no, this cannot be done. They said, no, the internal combustion engine cannot possibly work. It'll blow itself up. Well, yeah, if you're not careful, it'll blow itself up because you have flammable liquid and you have fire and you have the piston. Yeah, sure, it's going to blow itself up, but somebody figured it out. And because of it, we have vehicles that can move at incredible speeds. Man will never fly. You can't possibly go up in the air with something that weighs more than air. Well, we figured out the air that goes over the top, shape the wing of the negative pressure of the air on the top and the positive on the bottom, natural buoyancy, add to that thrust, light weights, and, use the wind and the resistance to your advantage, and bam, you're up in the air flying, right? That was a boundary that was obliterated. Man will never go into outer space. Well, okay, build a rocket, build a fuel that can push against the gravity hard enough and long enough and strong enough. And eventually you're in orbit, and eventually you're out of orbit, and eventually you got somebody on the moon. Eventually you've got probes landing on Mars, you know. So, you know, all kinds of limitations. You will never cure cancer, God forbid. And I hate that. But one day we will, you know, because again, God has given us a brain that we can use to do many great things, many good things, unfortunately, evil things as well. But still, those boundaries that are viewed upon as artificial boundaries, we exceed those in the name of innovation, in the name of progress, in the name of improvement, in the name of making life better for everyone around. I'm not satisfied with the status quo. You know, I'm not satisfied with just serving and helping 2 or 3 people. I want to help 10. If I have reached 10 and I have encouraged them to do better, then tomorrow I want to do 20. You know, that's part of the drive that God has placed within us, you know, to want to improve, to do better, to do good for mankind. And unfortunately, the capacity for, you know, for bad things is there as well. But still, you know, so yes, boundaries can be both good and bad. I think I kind of got off topic a little bit, but you know, that's how I see it. You know, the boundaries are great when you have a framework under which to operate, you have a goal to achieve, you have a game to play, you have a process that needs to be followed. Yes, boundaries, I'll accept them and operate under them, you know, under authority, whatever, 100% of the time. The boundary of gravity, yeah, you can't change gravity, especially if you are on the side of a building. You know, you cannot deny it, right? But boundaries in the sense of an obstacle that's going to keep me from doing something better, I will shatter. I will do anything and everything in my power by the grace of God to shatter that boundary and to make things better tomorrow than what they were today. Long answer to a short question.
Yeah. That's good. And I was wondering because it is something that is staying for a long time in my mind, and it is helping me, of course, to understand something. And when in the Bible, in the beginning, when men decided to take from the fruit and to go into the knowledge of good and evil, a lot of people think that this is actually something that is wrong, and it is long-term something that is not good for humanity, or at least this is the notion. But from the perspective of boundaries and from the perspective that man is created in a way that he always wants to go beyond, and
Right.
because anyhow, according to me, it was part of the way the creation of the human being is progressing, because this helps me to realize something, that actually we the human beings are work in progress, so to say. Mm-hmm. So we think that our first wrong choice is the end of the existence, but actually maybe something else is happening. We don't see it.
That's an interesting way to look at it. You know, I mean, it's a well-known fact. I don't make any bones about it. I am a Christian. As you and I have talked before, you know, and as I've talked with other people, I don't ram it down anybody's throat, but at the same time, I'm not going to be ashamed of my faith either. And sure, in the beginning, when God gave man a choice, and he chose to do evil, he chose to sin, he chose to disobey God, and to do what he had told them not to do. People make a big deal out of it and say that, you know, God was being restrictive, forgetting the fact that there were so many other trees. You know, you can have any tree you want, anything you want, just not that one. And what do? We, in our human nature, focus on the one that he said no, right? You know, mom and dad say, you can play with anything you want, but don't put your hand on that stove. Well, what are we going to do? We're going to put our hand on that stove. And when we get burnt, we realize, ow, there are consequences to disobedience. Okay. Well, in the same way, mankind made that decision to disobey the command, the clear command of God. And rather than enjoying the bounty of his provision, they chose to go against his directive. And, you know, the sinful nature that we all have, we forget that there are boundaries. There are, you know, getting back to the boundaries, you know, there's a difference between right and wrong. Why is it? Even for people who don't believe in God, there is an innate knowledge, that perception may be marred in many individuals, but there is a knowledge that there is a difference between right and wrong. And we have this propensity to choose the wrong over the right, you know, because we want to be in charge of our own lives and we want to make our own direction and so forth, and not accept authority in general, and especially the authority of the one true God. And again, I know I might make people upset when I say this, and I certainly don't mean to offend anyone who believes differently. This is my belief. Okay, this is my faith, and knowing that, you know, if I trust in the one true God, and in the provision that he made for salvation through his son, Jesus Christ, then I know that I have eternal life. And that is a thing that I am assured of in his word. Again, people may disagree and may feel differently. You're perfectly free to do so. But the question has to do with boundaries, and it has to do with, what am I going to choose for my life? Am I going to choose to run my own life my way, or am I going to go God's way and recognize that his will is best for me, even though I don't see it that way yet? You know, so yeah, in that sense, when it comes to boundaries, you know, we in our sinful nature tend to want to go astray, and sometimes, you know, God has to use certain means to bring us back to the right path. But, you know, I may not always go the right way, but I certainly want to strive to do things that please him, and to do things that exude excellence, so that whatever I do it to the very best of my ability, not just to have a good reputation and to be known as a good speaker, but ultimately the credit goes to the one, God, who gave me the brains, who gave me the ability, who gave me the talent, and I reflect the glory back to him.
Mm. Yeah, for me it is interesting long term, since when God said, okay, we are going to create men our according to our image, and to be like us. When men decided to disobey and to eat from the fruit and to go after the knowledge of good and evil, long term, immediately with this creation, there was a necessity to provide a savior and so on, in order long term, actually the human beings to be transformed into something that we still don't know what we are going to be.
That's true.
But the beautiful thing, according to me, this story is that this type of desire to go forward and not just to stay like in a fixed algorithm of things, by the provision of additional savior, actually, according to me, we are still work in progress in order
Yes, we are.
to become something different that long term can be participating with the creators into ruling of everything that is out there in a much more higher level of ability to really, okay, now we understand good and evil, we understand choice, we decide to always choose good, not because we need to, but because we, by experience, the human beings have realized that this is the only way things are workable long term. And for me, this human, not desire only, but this human instinct of taking the risks, because if we didn't take the risk then of going and taking out of this tree, it's a huge risk, because we risk everything. All of us are now suffering this risk the human beings took, but
the result of the choice.
But long term, we are going to be transformed into a beautiful being.
That's true. You know, God has provided a way to redeem mankind, right? Man made that wrong choice, and we inherited that sinful nature, and we make choices. We don't always choose the right. We sometimes choose the wrong, and we are in need of forgiveness. And as you put it so aptly, in need of a savior. And so, yeah, we it took that risk, gambled and lost, but yet we have gained because God, in His wisdom and love and compassion, has provided a way out. The sacrifice of His own Son, the shedding of His blood to pay for our sin. And when we get that and we understand that and we receive that gift that He so freely has provided, then He gives us the capacity to say no to the temptation that will tempt us to do wrong. We may still fall because we're still fallible human beings. We're still going to wonder, make right choices, make wrong choices, but we have this built-in innate desire to improve, to be better, to do better than what we did before. This innovation that we talked about, and this creativity. We're created in the image of God, who is our creator. Where do you think humans got this creative ability and this, knack for wanting to make something out of nothing, as He did with creation? Then we want to create something beautiful, and I guess the highest aspiration is to improve ourselves and to improve the lives of those around us, to show kindness and compassion to those about us, and to make things better regardless of the type of industry or business that you're in. That reflects back, I believe that reflects back on our Creator.
Yeah, and that's why when I look at the human being, in the moment we are still in the stage of being a seed that is going to die, and this is our first destination for all of us, to go
Right.
to the ground and die. But then our transformational process into something else that we are going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the afterlife.
Nobody knows what exactly is happening and how it's happening, but we never need to forget as human beings that we're still work in progress. We're still not
That's right.
products.
Yeah, we are. We are a work in progress, and we don't know what we shall be, but when we see Him, we shall be like Him, for we shall see Him as He is. The Apostle John said in 1 John chapter 3. We know that this life is only temporary, so live for what is beyond. And yes, we're not given a whole lot of detail. It's just like you were talking about earlier with looking at data, right? We're looking at the past. We can't see too much in the future. It's not a clear path. And so part of that magic, if you will, that causes us to think, okay, I don't see the whole picture, but I'm just going to do the next right thing. And for me as a Christian, that takes on an additional dimension because I don't know the whole picture. I'm going to trust in the master designer who knows the whole picture, who created everything and all that there is. And I'm just going to say, okay, Lord, I'm just going to leave this in your hands. I mean, I'm just going to keep moving forward the best I know how. I'm going to try to please you. I know I fail sometimes because I'm fallible, but you know what? I'm going to pray and ask you to give me the strength that I need to, when I'm making a keynote presentation, bam, I'm going to give it everything I got. When I'm working as a programmer, bam, I'm going to give it everything I got. When I have the opportunity to speak or to say something to encourage someone else, bam, I'm going to give it everything I've got to improve somebody else's life and make their day brighter and create value wherever I happen to go. What's that going to do? Yeah, that's going to give me a good reputation, but that's also going to reflect on Him. For if people know that I'm a Christian, and know that just because I have that label on me doesn't mean that I'm some Bible thumping freak. It doesn't mean that I'm going around with a hammer, hitting everybody on the head saying you're going to hell, that I'm going to whatever, do some strange thing, as sometimes is incorrectly depicted in the caricatures and stereotypes that one might see in movies, and unfortunately the bad impression some people give for those who call themselves Christians who do act this way. I am absolutely no model of that, but I want to do better tomorrow than I did today. Okay. And that's what drives me. to innovation. That's what drives me in when I do reports, when I talk about data, when I'm at a conference, when I'm in a meeting, regardless of the situation I find myself in. Yeah, I want to have a good reputation. I want people to know you can put me in as your speaker. But more than that, I could care less. Compared to that, more than anything else, I want to reflect credit back to my creator God, back to my savior, back to the one who gave me everything that I have, because every good and perfect gift cometh from above, from the Father of lights, in whom there is no shadow of turning. Okay. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And that's what drives me to excellence. That's what drives me to give 120%. Though I fail so quite often, I still want to be in that effort to try to improve things and bring some sunshine to other people around.
Yeah, that's great. And because I'm really strongly exploring all the construct of reality, and we, the human beings, now we are more than 8 billion, all of us,
It's a lot.
we have such strong egos that if
Oh yeah,
we are allowed, all of us can consume and absorb everything else in reality. If it's allowed,
right.
we have the
Oh
potential
yeah.
to do it.
Yes, we do. The ego gets in the way, and we want what we want. I mean, pride, ego, swelled head, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's what drove us to choose sin in the first place. That's unfortunately, without somebody putting the brakes on us and
Yeah.
having some sort of framework, as we talked about before, we'd all fall into that pit. Yeah.
And this big paradox that actually once we want to flourish and to really express ourselves, we need to learn how to subdue our ego under the creator. Only
Yes.
then we can really flourish and be ourselves. It's very paradoxical. When we want to be
It is.
ourselves, we are not allowed from the construct how everything is created, because
Right.
all the glory need to be his for a reason, because only
Yes.
we are able to express ourselves. This is how we are created.
Sure. Well, the thing that sometimes that believers forget, and maybe those unbelievers as well, there is a verse in the New Testament. It's Romans 8:28. It says, "For God worketh all things together for good." Not all things are good, but he works things together for good. He wants things for our good. He has designs for us for our good, not to harm us, but to help us. And when we don't see it that way, when I look at life through a different filter, make it me centered, then I'm going to look at anything that doesn't inflate my ego as a threat. I'm going to look at anything that doesn't grant me my every whim as a threat, rather than submitting myself to the greater good. Even people who don't believe in God, everybody talks the greater good, right? Well, I look at this as the greater good, and that is that, yes, ultimately, as you so aptly put it, the glory goes to God anyway. But it's so paradoxical because, in our humanity, we want what we want, right? The I gets in the way, right? And it is paradoxical, but only by the grace of God or are we able to conquer it. The Apostle Paul in Romans 7, I think it is, he said, "Oh, wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from the body of this death?" He talked about, there's so many good things that I want to do, but the evil that's within me, fights against it, and so that the good things that I want to do, I end up doing. It's a constant battle, and that's what it is. It's the two natures. Those who have been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb have a new nature, but they're still human beings in this human flesh that has still that propensity for wanting to go astray and go its own way. That's the reason for the struggle. That's the reason for the paradox, as you call it. That's exactly what it is. It's counterintuitive to modern philosophy. You know, the way up is down, right? The way to exaltation is to be humble. You know, right? And you know, and that makes sense. You know, you exalt yourself, and you know, you go across, you come across like an arrogant fool, then you'll find out you don't know it all, and you get knocked down, and it's very humbling. But if you go in with a humble attitude and knowing, you know, somebody else is better at this than I am, I'm just going to do the best I can, then eventually people recognize that, and you know, you will be exalted for being the person that comes up with the right answer, you know, whatever the case might be.
Yeah, that's great. So thank you very much for today's talk. We spoke a lot about
Yeah, we did.
data, the vision, how actually everything is created, and we gave some view about the Christian perspective of why life is like it is. And yeah, I like it a lot, this conversation, and I would like to thank you for your participation, your passion, your desire about learning, educating, and giving yourself away as a value for others, which is quite good and encouraging.
That's very kind of you to say, Alex. It has been my honor and pleasure to be on your program today, sir. I'm so grateful that you invited me, and thank you for being so kind and gracious to me this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I hope the people will enjoy these talks. Yes, not everything is nice to hear, and we can have different opinions about everything. But anyhow, all of us are doing the same thing. We are exploring what is out there.
There you go. That's exactly right.
Okay, so thank you very much.